Hey everybody, welcome to the DBS Films Podcast. My name is Kellen. With me as always is my brother Brendan, and together we make movies with DBS Films. In today's episode, we're going to go ahead and highlight the current landscape in the ever-shifting filmmaking arena. So we're going to review how to make an indie film in 2022. It is going to be a two-part episode. In the first part, we're basically going to go over the mindset, what you really kind of want to look at approaching it. And then in part two, we're going to get a lot more tactical and basically what you need to do, how you can set yourself up for distribution, how you can set yourself up to make your money back, and how you can set yourself up to make more movies. Before we get into that, as always, be sure to take a look at us online. We're at DBS Films. The best place to find us is our Discord channel because we make movies for our fans, with our fans. If you ever want to be part of the action, be part of the movie or the DBS filmmaking process, all you have to do is go ahead and check that out. So, as I kind of mentioned just now, we're going to really hop into the overall mindset of filmmaking. I think the first thing I want to kind of mention is something we typically talk about is how quickly the landscape for filmmaking really has shifted. And we always talk about there's two types of systems. You have your Hollywood system and then you have your indie system. Obviously, we're talking about indie movies, so we're going to be just really focusing on that. And I think the first thing I want to highlight is on the indie film level, you just really have a lot more of the onus and the responsibility on you in the sense of getting this project done. Where in the Hollywood system, you have an entire village and everyone's making money. I think a good first place to start off is just the difference between the Hollywood system and the indie system, and then more importantly, how fast the indie system moves and changes compared to the Hollywood system.
Yeah, so with the indie system, obviously you, like Kel said, you're going to be the driving force. You just don't have the budget to pay, a ton of producers to essentially make your project or have a whole DP and a whole team of camera operators. You just don't have that luxury. So I think in, the Hollywood system, you're going to have a ton of people to help you out. And that's, I think, the difference between a Hollywood movie and an indie movie is the Hollywood movies, the devil's in the details. Their details are very, very good because they have specific people whose job is to just make sure that every little piece of that movie is absolutely perfect, because it has to be if you're spending $10 million or up on a movie. The indie films, they're going to be a little bit more, gritty. There's going to be issues with them because you don't have a dedicated team to these little details because you just don't have the money. So it's not a bad thing, but you have to be the one driving this film, pushing it forward. You're completely responsible for everything all the way, from start to finish. And I do think a lot of indie filmmakers are like, well, if I could just get a writer, if I could just get a good director, if I could get a good producer, if I could get a good editor, my film will come together. And you could be waiting 5 to 10 years to get the perfect team, together. And even if you do have the perfect team, the odds of you making a good movie are very, very slim. So, you have to be the one, driving force. When I started to do the cinematography, when I started to write, when I started to direct, and when I started to edit all together, all the way through the process, everything became a lot easier. I work on my own timeline now, and I can get products out much quicker because I'm not doing something, sending it off for, to email or for feedback from like 3 or 4 different team members. I do it, I get a little bit of feedback on it if I'm questioning myself. But other than that, if I like it, we're going forward with it. And that, allows us to have a really quick turnaround time. We're about to shoot another movie, and really from concept to starting shooting is probably gonna be less than 30 days. So that just shows you the pace that we were able to operate, but we're only able to operate at that pace because, I'm the one pushing these things forward. If you're waiting for a team, if you want a team, just understand it's going to slow you down. It's going to cost you money. And really, as an indie filmmaker, the name of the game is to be as lean and as fast as possible.
That really is the case. And again, really to highlight the difference there, something we've talked about a lot of times is in the Hollywood system, things are a lot, slower to change because they don't necessarily need to change. They have so much money, they're making so much money, continue to do the status quo, continue to do this. And then I feel like it's the indie film market that really kind of is that bleeding edge for filmmaking. And one thing I kind of want to highlight is, you really look at Hollywood, what is still kind of the titan in right now is the theatrical release. Now, COVID and streaming has really kind of put a dent in that to a lot of different ones, but they're still going for the multi-million-dollar theatrical releases, such a massive thing that is just literally impossible for indie filmmakers. Whereas if you look at indie filmmakers, what are we doing? We're constantly looking for, is it TVOD? Now it's SVOD, now it's AVOD, now it's whatever it needs to be. And those changes are happening, quarter by quarter. These tech companies are fast. Amazon moves, Tubi moves. All of these companies are really kind of changing the landscape, whereas the Hollywood system is more theatrical. So you want to talk about how, as an indie filmmaker, you got to be on your toes. I mean, literally, we shift the way that our movies are done for what platform we think is going to basically be the ideal candidate for it.
Yeah, and this, a lot of filmmakers are upset about this. They're like, oh, the theatrical movie model's dying, DVDs are dying, and those are high price items. I mean, a movie ticket's $10, a DVD's $10. There's solid margins on it, especially when you consider that once you have a film, there's no real cost to distribute it. It's just a file. So yeah, that sucks, but it's bringing a rise to like the streaming platforms, like Kel said, which allows you to get more views. Like there's never been a better time than right now to get your work seen by a ton of people. YouTube is absolutely massive. Like if you can't get a distribution deal, put your stuff on YouTube and you'll get tens of thousands of views. And those are eyeballs on your work. And that, I think is the biggest thing for indie filmmakers, is just get feedback and get better. So it's not a bad thing. You're going to have to change with the industry. But like Kel said, I mean, every single week I get emails of new platforms that are popping up. We're trying to figure out where the next big one is. Tubi was very indie friendly for a while, and then Fox acquired them, and now they have very, very big name movies in there, and they're starting to push indie stuff to the bottom. So now there's going to be another, platform that's going to rise up, and that'll be the indie, like they're going to champion indie movies, because that's how you build a platform. There's a lot of people who really like indie movies. Indie movies are much cheaper than, the big Hollywood stuff. But, figuring out what platform that's going to be, we don't know yet. I have a inkling that's going to be YouTube. I think YouTube's going to really come out, and that'll be a really big game changer. But then you also have Netflix now that's going to have an ad-supported, tier, and they're going to need more content. And I think that content's going to be, they're fine with taking a little bit more risk with indie content because it's ads. And if you can drive traffic to your movie, I think that, Netflix, as long as they're fine with the quality, is going to open the floodgates back up to some indie content, which will be very beneficial to us, because we are at that cusp level of our stuff is really, really good, but we're just under like the tier 1 streaming services. So just maybe a little bit of help will get our stuff on there. But it changes every day. It changes every week. I think the landscape's shifting, and I don't think there's going to be much stability until things consolidate and these streaming channels start to, bundle each other up, almost like what we're going to get with cable again. But you have to be on your toes. I mean, that's just the industry. You have to understand that, and that's just got to be able to move fast.
Completely agree. And that's really the big difference. There is a lot of the different speed, which is why we want to kind of give you an update of where we're at in the filmmaking process as it comes into what we're doing. Give you an idea. We have right now 10 feature films that have been released, with 2 of them in post-production. We're also looking at filming another feature, our 13th. So really a lot of indie film movie making. And we just want to kind of give you an insight of what it's like and what our tips are when it comes to getting this process done, because making movies is quite the challenge, and we want to basically try and give as much information to potential filmmakers out there as possible. So biggest thing, and this is, I think, the number one thing, if I have to tell someone, hey, this is what we're going to do, this is what the process is like now, you have to do everything yourself. So we're at the point in time where, with indie filmmaking, the way that you can have the benefit, the way that you can do all of this, the way that you can get your movie done and basically keep it under budget, and also, more importantly, give it the additional, love it's going to require to get over the finish line, is understanding that you are going to be the writer, you are going to be the cinematographer and videographer. You're most likely going to be doing the editing as well. You're have the mindset that you have to do all of those as much as you possibly can. Now, obviously, you might not be able to do acting or, cinematography. You might have to pass that off. But the best number one mindset to have is you can do everything and you should do everything. And this is multiple benefits. One, it gives you experience in each of these roles. So when you do look to outsource them, you actually know what you're talking about and know what you're doing. This is one of the big things that happened to us. And I think it happens to a lot of directors. If you don't have the knowledge, you're going to be very uncomfortable in correcting someone on set. So number one, you get the knowledge, but number two, that is the only way that you can really start to maximize your budget. If you're hiring writers, if you're hiring multiple cinematographers, if you're hiring ADs, then you're just going to add up this amazing, cost element to it. Because again, we pay all of our team that are on set. The big difference for us is we realistically basically have like a single PA and special effects compared to what these massive Hollywood sets are. So do you want to kind of just discuss how you need to have the mindset that you're going to not only be the leading force, as you were talking about, but you're going to work in all these positions. And the big benefit you have now is there's information on all of this stuff. There's information on how to be a cinematographer. There's information on how to edit. There's courses everywhere. There's so much information out there that you can go. And also it costs, not that much to get a camera nowadays. Everything's digital. So you can immediately go from doing courses to basically hopping out there, even if it's on your phone, and creating something.
Yeah, I think you have to be learning this stuff. I really think that how segmented Hollywood and how they do it in film school is just not a good model right now. As far as like, I'm a writer, I'm a director, I want to be a grip, and these are such specific little pieces that on an indie set you have to do more. Like, there is no reason why you cannot learn to write. You can learn to direct, you can learn to edit, and you can learn to become a cinematographer. There's a ton of YouTube classes, especially on cinematography. I think just learning how to do that is going to be the biggest benefit for you, because then you can purchase the camera. And really, in the beginning for indie films, trying to cheat a Hollywood look and make the movie look cinematic is very, very difficult. And if you don't have a cinematographer that knows what they're doing, you're gonna be in trouble right away, because people are gonna notice poor audio and poor picture very, very quickly. And even when you have really good stuff, it's still very hard to cheat that Hollywood movie. But if you learn how to become a cinematographer, you'll get better each time. And there's just a lot of people out there who are looking for a paycheck. And so I think there's just a lot of people out there who are willing to work on your project, but they just want that paycheck. And nobody's going to put as much passion and love into the project as you are. And you have to be that person in charge of this stuff. That you just have to do it. But learning how to write, learning how to direct, learning how to be a cinematographer, and learn how to edit is going to make you just better at all those positions. Especially if you're a director. When I first started out, I was leaning on my crew to essentially tell me what is possible and what's not possible. And they'd be like, yeah, sure, I could get this shot. And really, there's no possible way to get that shot. Or I'd be like, hey, can we do this? And they'd be like, no, you can't do that. When now I know we could have got that shot. So your directing style and how you're going to work with people will be much better if you know even just a basic understanding of this stuff, of what's possible and what's not possible. Because you don't want to ask your cinematographer to spend all this time and work on this shot if it's just not possible. And you want to be able to, communicate with a cinematographer, and you're like, hey, I want this shot. And he's like, I don't think so. I don't think we can do that. And you're like, all right, like, I know we can get this shot. Let's attempt it. So you want to have that communication level. And I think it's respect too. You don't want to be the director that's asking for all this crazy stuff. And the cinematographers can get annoyed if you have all these crazy shots and stuff that are just difficult. And just understanding how long things take to set up, as far as lighting and, setting up scenes. If you're asking for these crazy shots, sometimes the setups are a little bit longer. But then once again, everyone on your set's going to take their own time. They don't want to rush. They want to, take their time. They get paid extra if they actually go into overtime. And there's no incentive to get this done. They want to, use up as much time as possible. But if you're the one in charge of them, you understand how long these shots take, you're going to be much better at scheduling, and you're going to be able to command that voice on set to be like, look, this next shot's going to take 2 hours. Let's get it done. And if people start slowing down, you can, crack the whip a little bit and just make sure they're moving as quickly as possible.
It really is going to come down to you. And this is the biggest thing that I just really want all filmmakers to understand is you have to have that mindset of basically you're going to be pushing everything. You're going to be working harder and you need to do everything. And if it sounds like daunting, you're like, oh, I don't know how I can do this. You're just going to learn. That's the easy part. You just keep doing it. You will keep learning. So that's one of the bigger ones there. I think the next level that, we talk about in a few other podcasts on just making movies in general, but I think is still super critical in 2022. You have to understand what the end goal is. So start with the end in mind. For us, it's really how do we continue to make lower budget indie movies so that we can continue to learn and make them and that they can recuperate their costs, which is a big one. Something we talked about early on is I think a lot of filmmakers have just the wrong mentality. They think they're going to make one small thing. It's going to lead to a much bigger thing. It's going to lead to a much bigger thing. And now they're making multi-million-dollar movies. And really, that route is not quite there. Sure, it happens to one or two directors potentially, but really the traditional route of almost kind of making your short, getting it into a film festival and getting a movie out of it, or making a smaller movie and then getting a bigger movie deal, it's just really not there as much due to the plethora of content. So I think really one of the bigger things I want to talk about now with mindset is, in my opinion, in this day and age, your mindset can no longer be, I'm going to make one movie and this movie is going to be a hit. If it is, massive props to you. I would be very excited for you. It would be fantastic. But typically what we're seeing nowadays is the people who are making a career are the people who are going to get to their fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th movie, in the sense that you need to be thinking right away from this point, how do I make this a reoccurring process? Because a lot of filmmakers out there, they'll take way too much time. They'll spend way too much resources. They'll release a single movie when they should have done a lot more. And the same flaws that they could easily have worked out over the course of 5 movies for that same amount of budget and improve upon, they basically blew it all on the first movie. And now they're scrambling for distribution. They get something, they might never recuperate their costs. And to me, that's just almost kind of like, you blow your engine out as a filmmaker right there.
Yeah, I think the mindset needs to change of, I'm a director, I need someone to hire me to make these movies and I want a paycheck to make these movies. If you have that in mind, then your odds of success of having a career, I think, are a little bit lower. I think you have to change your mindset to almost become a production house. So it's like, all right, how do I get this movie done? How do I upload it? And then how do I make sure that I have enough money and, enough contacts and enough team to make another movie? And, if you do get picked up, or if you make better connections to give yourself a budget, that's a win. But I think you really need to be able to focus on, all right, how do I make the next movie? And you should always be thinking about that. When I'm working on one movie, I'm like, all right, making sure the budget's good so that we have enough money to, make the next movie. I don't view myself as being like, all right, here is the one movie that I'm going to make. I'm going to go show it to a lot of people. It's probably going to get a lot of views. And then I'm going to pitch that movie to, other producers or distribution companies, and I'm hoping they're going to pick me up, or I'm going to sign with a manager or a new agent or something like that. It just doesn't work like that, especially with these distribution companies. They have so much content. Why would they take a risk on, giving you money as an unproven filmmaker when there's a ton of other companies and people who are just giving them a finalized product on a USB drive? So it doesn't make any sense. So I think you have to remove yourself as a one-off producer, a one-off director, or a one-off writer, and really focus yourself. This is what you want to do. You are a production house. You're a production house writer. You're going to write as many movies and make as many movies as possible. You're a production house director. You're going to make as many movies as possible. You have to just really change your mindset from being a single person, a single entity, to building a business. You are the business now, and your job is to produce as much content, or your job is to produce as much content as possible, upload it, and continue to do this. And you need to get revenue from that. That's how a business operates. You can't be running the red every single, movie. And I think that's a lot of problems with you know, the indie movies is the people will make a movie, they'll be $150,000 in debt, and they have no way of getting that money back. So you really have to sit down and become an entrepreneur if you want to do this for an extended period of time. You can't wait for someone to come and save you. The cavalry is not coming. You have to be in charge of your decisions, and you have to be able to you know, make as much money as possible and make your next movie.
It's all on you, 100%. And I think one of the bigger ones that I kind of wanted to mention in this episode, which I think is us being on the bleeding edge of filmmaking development, is start focusing in on your community. So I think this is something that you're going to start seeing more and more as things begin to almost kind of, present more access with social media. Hollywood, again, is a very closed off system. Very few people, they do a lot of things where you're not allowed to show behind the scenes because it's like you're going to spoil the movie and everything there. I think the next level that you're going to see is almost more like how you see basically YouTubers and content creators now, where they give you a full inside access to their life. I think you're going to see studios that are going to start to doing that, specifically with our model, where, we now believe very, very truly in our model of making movies for our fans with our fans. And this can be done through a lot of different social media platforms now, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Discord's a massive one for us, but basically being able to engage with your audience directly is something that I don't think you really had at your fingertips as much when it comes to, even just the past few years. And I think the studios that are going to look at looping in their community, building a fan base, because realistically, one of the most powerful things is with the DBS brand and the DBS family that we have within our Discord, it doesn't matter what movie we make. We're going to make a movie, and that movie is going to have an instant fan base, an instant amount of reviews, an instant success on the algorithm. And I think this is something where if you're a filmmaker out there, even if it's 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 people, right now we're closing in on 300,000 on TikTok, closing in on 12,000 on Discord. And this is all within 1 year. Now, again, we're a little bit, different with DBS, and, we can kind of put a little bit more muscle into it. But on any level of scale, you as a filmmaker should be thinking, how can I create my community? How can I create the community so I can have a long lasting brand? And if you think about it, if you become more of kind of like a content creator / filmmaker, it's going to be easier for you to develop in this system. Whereas if you're going to be more traditional filmmaker, I think one thing that I see all the time in like indie filmmaking on like podcasts and stuff like that is they'll shun social media. They'll basically be like, oh, I don't need to post and I can't embrace it. Embrace it. This is the way you're going to differentiate yourself. This is the way people are going to know about you. This is really one of the biggest pieces of advice I would give to filmmakers in this current time frame is people who build the larger communities will have the larger success, because now you need eyeballs. Eyeballs is the hardest thing to get. And if you can already have a set group ready to go, it's going to be immensely beneficial, not only for this film you're working on, but each and every film after that too.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's how to build a business 101 is to, the first step is to find your audience. And I think that a lot of indie filmmakers just don't know who their audience is. They're either making films that nobody really wants to watch besides them. They want to make a film for themselves. And that's totally fine. But when you go to, put it up on Amazon, these other platforms, and no one buys it, that's on you, man. That's not that's not a good business model. But, I mean, that's how the DBS publishing company works is we just have, we collect a lot of email addresses. We know what fans are interested in the books that we write, and we take that and we cultivate that community, but we do it via email, which is one step. So we have Facebook and email addresses. And I think what we're doing now with the DBS or the DBS Films arm of the business is we're cultivating that and really making sure that the community is, very strong and flourishing, and we're adding value to the community. We're doing things that, are worth their time, because I'm so grateful to be able to, number one, get their feedback on these movies, but they're watching and they're giving us ideas. I communicate with them daily, and the feedback has been absolutely fantastic. So I think the first step is just find, your audience, the people who like the stuff that you're doing, the second step is to, collect that information. Make sure that when you have a release, you can either put it on your social media stuff or send out an email saying, hey, look, I have a new movie out, check it out. But I think the top tier way to do it is to actually build a community via social media and cultivate that community, because there's people out there who really like your stuff. And, it's on you to be able to make sure that you're providing value to them. And, because when they come out and they purchase your stuff, like, there has to be a reason for it. And I think it has to be a two-way street. But I think unless you have a community, you're going to struggle. There's just so much content out there, and these platforms are pushing the stuff that they want to push. And it's really it's on you to be able to cultivate your fans and really reward them with a quality product, but also a fun and engaging time.
That's really the case now. And on top of that, there's so many different tools now that are allowing you to do this. And between just all of the different successes that we see, typically when you're seeing these larger movies being made, it's usually on the back of a very large community here. So I think that's one of the most important things that you can look into, and that's a big recommendation. That's going to go ahead and wrap up this part of the two-part episode on how to make an indie movie in 2022. Again, really just to kind of highlight basically the overall concepts here. It's never been easier to make a movie in the sense of what's out there, which is a big plus. It's never been harder to get that movie seen. So really what you need to end up focusing on is, one, keeping your costs down by being able to do everything, as we mentioned, being that driving force for it, understanding that this is the creativity that you can do. You have to understand now that you're going to need to make a production house instead of just one movie. You're going to have to continue to do this. And also that you're, creating your entire community. Would you say there's, any other overall things mindset wise that you would wish on the filmmakers out there?
I mean, I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, you just have to be flexible. You have to be nimble. This is a very new industry as far as like the streaming platforms go. Even in the last couple of years, the option to really, Tubi wasn't really around, or you didn't really have the option to distribute to Tubi and get your film like seen like it is now. So everything's changing extremely fast, but it's extremely lucrative for the people who can do what we're telling you to do, and that's just make a lot of movies, upload a lot of movies, and build a community. If you can do that, you'll have a much greater chance of success, as opposed to someone who just makes one movie and waits for the perfect time to do it. Just work every single day on your craft, get better every single day at your craft, and just continually upload stuff. That is the business model right now. And that, I guarantee you, the person who uploads more movies is going to have more success than the person who, only does one or two every couple of years.
Yep, 100%. I'll take that bet too, because really what's going to end up happening here is you now have the opportunity to create and practice your craft more effectively and efficiently than ever before, and you have the ability for a community to be built and seen from this. The hard part, though, as we mentioned, is, well, it's a lot harder to get a lot of the things seen on the grand scale and also make your money back. But those who are going to continue to put in the work, those who are going to continue to put in the effort, in the sense of really moving forward with the ability to go ahead and continue to produce content, continue to build a community, those are the filmmakers that are going to get rewarded, and those are the filmmakers that are going to have a lot of success here. So that's going to go ahead and wrap up the first episode here. Next episode, we're going to go into more tactical things of basically what you want to do, what you want to look for, how to make this movie, how to approach it. This one, again, was more of kind of the overall mindset that you want to have as an indie filmmaker. Be sure to go ahead, take a look at us online, join our Discord channel. If you are a filmmaker out there, we are always huge on giving any kind of advice and feedback that we can. We want to support indie filmmaking as much as we possibly can. If you ever wanted to be in our movies, that's where the place to be too. We make movies for our fans, with our fans. We have castings for all of our feature films, so be sure to take a look, find us online. We love to meet new people. We love to have more people who are part of the horror movie scene, so be sure to do it. Take a look at us, check us out. But until then, have a good one.